aged briar. There's an awful lot of new pipe makers out there, and there's a lot of people that are making pipes and buying briar that has not been aged and has not been boiled. Briar should be boiled, and then it should be dried for a couple years after it's boiled. A good briar cutter will do that. So they cut the briar, they go up and dig the briar out, they cut the briar just like a diamond cutter cuts a diamond, and they cut it so that it's going to fit the bowl of the pipe and so forth, and then they boil it, and then they dry it. The briar maker I use happens to be one of the most used briar cutter, I should say, one of the most used briar cutters in the world, really. And he ages his for 2 years. So when I get briar from him, and I'm not just saying me, I'm saying a lot of the guys that make pipes, it's at least 2 years old then. Okay, I put my pipe, my briar on the rack then in my shop, and it's aged for at least another 2 years. So I don't even make a pipe out of a block of briar until it's been above ground and air dried for 4 years. That's the minimum. Actually, it's probably more like 7 years by the time I get to it. So the older the briar, the theory is, the smoother and the cooler the smoke. And it makes a big difference. Now there's other things that can make for a cooler smoke and a good smoke, which we'll talk about. But you want briar that's been aged. You want briar that's been boiled. This, and when I'm saying this, I'm saying this is something you should be asking a pipe maker if you're going to buy a pipe from them. If they actually cured the briar in any way. There's also, it's not just the air dry, but there are also pipe makers who use a curing process. I use a curing process. The most common curing process is what's called an oil cure. I don't use an oil cure, but I use something else, and it's proprietary, and so are most of the oil cures proprietary. But you should ask if the briar, that's out of anything I can tell you, if you buy a pipe that hasn't been aged, the briar hasn't been aged, you're going to have tannins and things in there that are just going to make it bitter, and it may never come around. Okay, again, my opinion. But the other thing about briar is very porous. So it picks up and transfers all kinds of juices and so forth. If those juices are left in there, they're just going to come into the bowl because the heat is going to draw them back into the bowl. So that's what we're talking about. Briar is so porous that you can actually blow with a pressure, like out of a compressor. You can blow water literally through it. You can have your stain will leak through to the inner bowl if you're using too much stain. That's how porous the briar is. The capillary, whatever you want to call it, capillary action, I guess. Okay, now when we're talking about looking at briar and looking at types of pipes, of course, we've got the smooth and the straight grains. Most of us like the straight grains. We've got the blasts and the crosscuts. Okay, the reason I mention this is that for coolness, you get more surface area when you start looking at blasts. So think about it. What I was just saying about this capillary action. Now you get more surface area when you start making your lines in your pipe and you're blasting it, so it's going to cool it more. The other thing that's said anyway, and I happen to be a person that believes it, is that crosscut briar is cooler smoking because of more of the capillaries being cut crosswise. In other words, if the grain's going like this, you have more surface area where it's opened up, where the pores are opened up, than when it's going straight up and down. Pardon?
Which one of these would be a crosscut?
Crosscut, well, some of the blasts are actually crosscuts, so you got dual there. This is a crosscut. Okay, it's a good question. This is called a blowfish, okay, and this is crosscut. So the grain, you can see, runs this way instead of up and down. If you're talking up and down, this is the surface that you've really gotten. I'm not saying there isn't any action here, but this is the most action, the rim, because of the cut. Think of, you know, I can't think of any other word but capillary to go up there. Okay, the little trails that are created from it. So, whereas here, there's all kinds of surface, both sides. The other thing, if you get a pipe that's too shiny, you want to worry that somebody's not using some kind of varnish on it or something that's not natural, because it's closing up the pores. Okay, and there are some out there nowadays that are using that type of a surface finish on them to make them pretty and shiny. Okay, next thing that's really important with looking at buying a pipe and looking for a pipe that's going to smoke good, in my opinion, it's probably the most primary thing, and that is the thickness of the bowl walls. Okay, I believe that you got to have at least a 1/4 inch on that bowl wall. Mine are more than a 1/4 inch, most of them, even the smaller pipes. Okay, if you don't have that protection of those capillaries and that porousness of the bowl to soak up the heat, that's what it also does. The heat's going to go into the smoke, and it's going to be a hotter smoke. If it's a hotter smoke, your tongue's going to be hotter, and you're going to have a sore tongue from it. Okay. And that's actually what when we were talking about caking earlier, that's what the caking does for the pipe. Okay, bowl shape, and I'm talking inner bowl shape. There's two kinds that are general, let's say. One is a taper and the other is an English. And there's slow tapers and full tapers. This bowl on this pipe happens to be a full taper. So it goes like so. A slow taper is a little bit less and a little bit more at the bottom. Okay? An English bowl is very round at the bottom. Okay? And as you smoke your pipes, you know, I'm just telling you this to pay attention to it, because if you find a pipe that smokes better for you, I think it's more tuned to the individual person and how you smoke, how fast you smoke, how slow you smoke. And you may find that, you know, I found over all my years of smoking that my pipes should be tapered bowls. They smoke better for me. But there are people that have the rounded bottom bowls, the English bowls, and it smokes better for them. Also, I think an English bowl smokes better in a bent pipe, and a taper smokes better in a straight pipe. When we're talking about bowls also, the first thing we should look at, you know, we always look at how pretty the pipe is, okay? And I'm as guilty of it as anybody is, you know, and you get stars in your eyes looking at that pipe. But what you want to do is you want to look inside. You want to be sure that the draft hole comes into the center of the bowl, always. Shouldn't be off. If it's off, you're going to have a problem with smoking that pipe. Guaranteed. It's not going to smoke right. And that it's at the bottom of the bowl, okay? Not just the center, but it's at the very bottom of the bowl. It can have a little bit below the draft, but it shouldn't. I mean, I shouldn't say it shouldn't. It should be better. It would be better to be right at the bottom of the bowl. So that's something you can check out on these pipes. You will find every one of them is dead center and every one is right at the bottom. And I'm not the only one. There's many guys that are excellent at their carving and